The controversy surrounding Rachel Zegler's comments about her role in the upcoming Snow White movie seemed to be calming down as she focused on her Broadway performances in Romeo and Juliet, keeping a low profile in the media. However, Ziggler recently gave an interview to Variety where she addressed the backlash, reigniting the outrage among fans and critics. Her comments in the interview sparked two main points of contention that have once again set the internet abuzz with criticism. The first point that drew criticism was when Zegler implied that the backlash she's facing over her portrayal of Snow White is rooted in a broader pattern of society tearing down women. She mentioned that she has watched women being criticized her whole life and suggested that this is the underlying reason for the attacks against her, a statement that many found dismissive of the legitimate concerns expressed by fans. As expected, this led to a wave of backlash, with many people accusing her of deflecting criticism and using gender as a shield against any negative feedback regarding her portrayal of the character. The second controversial statement came when Ziggler expressed sadness over how her comments were received, claiming that she believes women can do anything but also emphasized that they can do everything. She clarified that what she intended to convey was that this new version of Snow White still desires romance but also has ambitions beyond just a love story. Critics were quick to highlight an earlier interview where Ziggler explicitly stated that her Snow White would not be centered around a love story at all, instead focusing on her becoming a strong leader. This contradiction in her statements has fueled speculation that recent reshoots of the movie may have added romance elements back into the storyline, further confusing fans about the film's direction. Analyzing Ziggler's comments in the context of past Disney live-action remakes, it becomes clear that backlash over casting female leads isn't universal. For example, Lily James in Cinderella 2015 and Emma Watson in Beauty and the Beast. 2017 faced minimal criticism, unlike the intensity Ziggler has experienced. Even in the case of Camila Cabello's Cinderella 2021, there was less backlash towards her as a Hispanic actress, with criticism mainly directed at other aspects of the film. Meanwhile, Halle Bailey's casting in The Little Mermaid sparked debate, but the criticism was mostly about the film itself, rather than personal attacks on Bailey. Rachel Zegler's remarks about her portrayal of Snow White have not only drawn criticism but also fueled a broader discussion about the role of actors in reimagining classic characters. Many suggest that her attempt to frame the backlash as an issue rooted purely in sexism is too narrow and overlooks the nuanced reasons why audiences may be reacting negatively. While it's undeniable that female actresses in leading roles often face challenges rooted in gender bias, furthermore, Ziggler's critics point out that her comments might be seen as a missed opportunity to unite fans behind a shared vision of a modern Snow White. Instead of emphasizing the positive aspects of her portrayal and how it builds upon the original character's legacy, she has sometimes focused on what she sees as the shortcomings of the past. This has been perceived by some as a form of entitlement or an attempt to score points in a larger cultural debate, rather than a genuine effort to celebrate a beloved story. Critics of Zegler argue that the criticism she faces is more about the content of her comments and her approach to the character than about her gender itself. Comparing Ziggler's situation with Halle Bailey's experience highlights the differences in how public perception can vary based on an actor's handling of backlash. When Bailey was announced as Ariel in The Little Mermaid, there was immediate pushback from some quarters, mainly because her casting involved a race-swapped version of a historically white character. However, despite the controversy, the backlash was mostly centered around the idea of changing a beloved character's appearance rather than being a personal attack on Bailey as an individual. Bailey's handling of the situation was notable for its grace and focus. She made it clear that she was honored to play Ariel, maintaining a tone of excitement and respect for the opportunity without resorting to any defensive or inflammatory comments. Her ability to distance herself from the negativity, coupled with her charismatic presence in interviews, allowed her to win over many critics who initially doubted her casting. By not making her portrayal a statement against the original or attempting to radically change its narrative, Bailey was able to maintain a sympathetic image, even among those who might have had reservations about the direction of the film. Rachel Zegler's approach, by contrast, has been seen as more confrontational and has not resonated in the same way. When she openly criticized the original Snow White for its perceived lack of modern values and its focus on the love story, she positioned her new interpretation as a corrective to what she seemed to view as flaws in the original narrative. While her intentions may have been to emphasize a more progressive and empowered version of the character, This approach came across to some as dismissive of the original film's legacy, which is cherished by many as a timeless classic. This contrast in handling the backlash reveals a crucial aspect of public perception. It often hinges not just on the changes made to beloved characters, but on the actors' attitudes toward those changes. Ziggler's strong opinions on the character and the direction of the new film have created a sense of alienation among fans who feel that her comments undermine the nostalgia and magic that made the original Snow White so special. Critics argue that while there is always room for reinterpretation, it is possible to introduce new elements without appearing to discredit or disparage the source material. As the new adaptation of Snow White nears its release, much will depend on how Ziggler continues to handle the spotlight and whether she can redirect the narrative in a way that focuses on the film's artistic achievements rather than on the controversies surrounding her comments. It will also be interesting to see if the studio or her fellow cast members step in to steer the conversation back to the At the end of the day, the controversy surrounding Rachel Zegler's portrayal of Snow White and her comments on the character are reflective of a larger cultural moment. We are in an era where public figures are scrutinized not just for their work but for their views, their words, and their interactions with the public. This intense focus means that any statement made by a high-profile individual can be both a weapon and a shield, depending on how it is received by the audience. Film itself, highlighting its merits and the work that went into bringing a modern version of the tale to life. Ultimately, this situation serves as a reminder that the intersection of art, culture, and public perception is more complex than ever. Both Rachel Zegler and her audience have the right to their opinions, and the conversations that arise from these interactions are part of the broader cultural dialogue. Whether or not this new Snow White film will be remembered as a success or a misstep will be determined by how well it connects with its viewers and whether it can resonate beyond the controversies that currently surround it. In contrast, Rachel Zegler's statements have been perceived by some as a criticism of the original Snow White, suggesting that the character's focus on a love story was outdated or lacking in substance. This critique has led many to feel that Ziggler is not just reinterpreting the role but is outright dismissing the elements that made the character beloved for generations. For many fans, these comments come across as an attack on their cherished memories of the film, and this has intensified the backlash against her. The public's attachment to classic fairy tales often goes beyond just nostalgia. It's a deep-rooted connection to stories that have shaped cultural perceptions and ideals. Moreover, Zegler's outspoken nature has led to discussions about the balance between advocating for progressive values and respecting the historical context of beloved characters. The conversation has shifted from a simple debate about character portrayal to a more complex discussion on how far modern adaptations should go in reshaping classic narratives. While updating these stories to reflect contemporary sensibilities is important, there is a fine line between enhancing a character's traits and erasing the qualities that originally defined them. Ziggler's approach, in emphasizing Snow White's role as a leader and downplaying the love story, has stirred controversy by appearing to discredit the romantic aspects that are integral to the original tale. The comparison between Ziggler and other actresses who have portrayed modernized versions of classic characters continues to reveal important differences in how public perception is shaped. For instance, Gadot, who plays the evil queen in the same adaptation of Snow White, has also spoken about her character's motivations and complexities, yet her remarks have not sparked the same level of controversy. This contrast suggests that while both actresses are discussing their characters from a modern perspective, the tone and approach they use significantly influence how their comments are received by the audience. Gadot's focus on bringing depth to a traditionally villainous role has been seen as a welcome addition to the narrative, rather than a dismissal of the character's origins. Her comments have been framed in a way that celebrates the complexity of the evil queen, without undermining her place in the classic storyline. This approach has helped Gadot avoid the backlash that Zegler has faced, even though both actresses are part of the same film with similar goals of modernizing their characters. It raises the question of whether Zegler's backlash is not just about what she said, but also how she said it and the perceived attitude behind her words. Furthermore, the backlash against Zegler's remarks can also be seen as a reflection of the broader cultural debate surrounding Hollywood's approach to reimagining classic stories. Audiences today are increasingly divided on how much creative license filmmakers and actors should take when adapting beloved tales. Some argue that modern reinterpretations are necessary to keep these stories relevant and engaging for new generations. Others, however, believe that these adaptations often go too far in altering characters and plotlines, losing the essence of what made the originals timeless. Zegler's comments, seen as dismissive of the original Snow White, have inadvertently positioned her as a figurehead in this cultural debate. Critics argue that by focusing so heavily on what she sees as the flaws of the original film, Zegler missed an opportunity to build a bridge between the past and the present. Her approach might have been more successful if she had framed her portrayal of Snow White as an evolution of the character, one that honors the original while introducing new dimensions that resonate with contemporary audiences. Instead, her direct critiques have been interpreted as a rejection of the classic version, which has alienated fans who view the original Snow White as an untouchable piece of cinematic history. Adding to this complexity is the role of social media in amplifying the controversy. In today's digital age, statements made by public figures can quickly go viral, with reactions ranging from supportive to harshly critical. Ziggler's comments about Snow White were dissected and debated across various social media platforms, where users often take sides and polarize discussions. This environment can create echo chambers that amplify the negativity and make it more difficult for the actor to shift the narrative in their favor. What might have been a small controversy in the pre-digital era has now exploded into a major cultural debate due to the speed and reach of social media. Ziggler's situation also highlights the challenges faced by young actors in navigating the pressures of fame and public scrutiny. As a rising star, she is still in the process of defining her public persona, and the backlash has undoubtedly influenced how she will approach future roles and interactions with the media. Unlike seasoned actors who have established reputations and fan bases, Ziggler is more vulnerable to public opinion, which can shape her career trajectory in significant ways. The way she responds to this controversy will likely play a crucial role in determining her long-term image in Hollywood. There is also an underlying conversation about the expectations placed on women in the industry, particularly young actresses who are often subjected to a level of scrutiny that their male counterparts may not face to the same extent. While it's clear that Ziggler's outspoken nature and critical comments about Snow White have been a major factor in the backlash, it's also worth acknowledging that women in Hollywood are often judged more harshly for their opinions and behavior. This double standard means that even legitimate criticism can sometimes be overshadowed by the unfair expectations placed on female public figures. Expanding on the nuances surrounding Rachel Zegler's portrayal of Snow White, it's crucial to recognize that the reception of her performance and her public remarks is shaped by a complex web of cultural and industry standards. The entertainment world often presents a double standard when it comes to creative freedom, depending largely on the gender of the performer. For male actors, stepping outside the boundaries of traditional character portrayals is frequently seen as a mark of their versatility and depth as artists. They are often praised for their ability to bring new dimensions to iconic roles, even if these interpretations deviate significantly from previous incarnations. For female actors like Rachel Zegler, however, the terrain is often less forgiving. When they attempt to reinterpret iconic characters or speak out about the need for change in their roles, they can be met with resistance or even hostility. In Ziggler's case, her critique of the original Snow White and her vision of the character as a more empowered, self-sufficient figure has not been universally embraced. Some audiences have interpreted her comments as a rejection of the values that defined the classic story, rather than an evolution of the character. This reaction underscores a societal tendency to hold female actors to traditional standards, where stepping outside the expected narrative can lead to accusations of disrespect or entitlement, rather than being seen as a bold move toward reimagining the character. This response from audiences suggests a deeper resistance to change that often surrounds classic characters, especially when the change is initiated by women who critique the original material. The discussion around Zegler's comments has sparked debates about whether updating these tales to align with contemporary values dilutes their timeless qualities, or if it enriches them with new relevance for today's viewers. The balance between preserving the magic of a fairy tale and making it resonate with modern audiences is a delicate one, and Zegler's comments have put her at the center of this cultural crossroads. The scrutiny Zegler faces is also tied to the broader trend of Hollywood reimagining traditional narratives through a more progressive lens. In recent years, there has been a push within the industry to adapt classic stories to reflect greater diversity, equality, and social awareness. While these efforts are often well-intentioned and necessary to ensure representation and relevance, they also invite polarized reactions from audiences who are divided on how much these beloved stories should evolve. Some viewers welcome these changes as a reflection of a more inclusive society, while others perceive them as unnecessary alterations that compromise the authenticity of the originals. In the case of Snow White, this tension is amplified by the character's historical significance as Disney's first animated princess. For many, Snow White represents not just a story, but a foundational part of their childhood and a symbol of traditional fairy tale romance. Ziggler's vocal criticism of the character's past portrayal, seen as out of touch with contemporary ideals, has thus been taken by some as an affront to the nostalgia and cultural heritage embedded in the original film. This reaction highlights the powerful emotional attachment that audiences can have to these iconic characters, and the challenges actors face when they attempt to reshape these narratives. As the release date of the new Snow White adaptation draws nearer, the stakes are high not just for Ziggler but for Disney as a whole. The studio's track record with live-action adaptations has been mixed, with some films like Cinderella and The Jungle Book receiving praise for their balance of fidelity to the source material with contemporary updates, while others like Mulan and Aladdin faced backlash for perceived cultural insensitivity or lackluster execution. The outcome of Snow White could have significant implications for Disney's approach to future adaptations, influencing whether the company continues to modernize classic tales or takes a step back to preserve their traditional elements. If the film succeeds in capturing the hearts of audiences, it may validate Ziggler's vision and pave the way for more reinterpretations of classic characters that emphasize strength, independence, and leadership over romance and traditional gender roles. This could signal a broader acceptance of female actors taking creative control over their roles, pushing for narratives that reflect their values and perspectives. On the other hand, if the film fails to resonate, it could reinforce the idea that there are limits to how much audiences are willing to accept changes to these beloved characters, especially when those changes are accompanied by critical commentary on the originals. In the context of Zegler's career, how she handles this period of heightened scrutiny will be crucial in shaping her image within Hollywood and among moviegoers. If she can navigate the backlash with grace and tact, perhaps by acknowledging the importance of the original film while still advocating for her modern take on the character, she may be able to turn the narrative around in her favor. Much like Halle Bailey's handling of the controversy surrounding her casting as Ariel in The Little Mermaid, Ziggler's ability to shift the conversation toward the positive aspects of her portrayal could help mitigate some of the negativity. Furthermore, Ziggler's experience serves as a case study for the entertainment industry on how to support its stars when they face public backlash. How studios and fellow actors respond to these controversies can play a significant role in shaping public opinion. If Disney and Ziggler's colleagues stand by her vision and emphasize the importance of reimagining classic stories for new generations, it could bolster her credibility and encourage audiences to give her version of Snow White a fair chance. Ultimately, the conversation surrounding Rachel Zegler's portrayal of Snow White goes beyond her individual performance. It delves into the evolving dynamics of gender roles, the power of nostalgia, and the challenges of cultural adaptation in a rapidly changing world. As audiences become more vocal and divided in their expectations, actors like Ziggler must navigate a landscape that demands both innovation and reverence for the past. How this plays out in the reception of the new Snow White film will likely influence not just Ziggler's career but also the broader trajectory of how fairy tales are retold for generations to come. Ultimately, the conversation around Rachel Zegler's portrayal of Snow White and her approach to the character is a microcosm of a larger dialogue about storytelling, representation, and respect for cultural legacies. As more classic tales are reimagined for new audiences, these debates are likely to continue, pushing both the industry and the viewers to consider what they value most in their beloved stories. For Zegler, the journey ahead will involve not just proving her talent as an actress but also navigating the complex dynamics of public opinion and the evolving standards of Hollywood storytelling. Profile projects, such as Jenna Ortega, Anya Taylor-Joy, Zendaya, and Sydney Sweeney, it's clear that young women in Hollywood can be celebrated and embraced by the public. These actresses have also played significant roles in big productions without facing the same level of personal criticism as Ziggler. This suggests that the issue might not be a simple case of women being torn down by the industry or the public, but rather how they choose to present themselves and engage with their audiences. The complexity of this situation underscores that blanket statements rarely capture the full picture. Ziggler's outspoken nature may have made her a more polarizing figure, with some people admiring her for speaking her mind, while others see her comments as unnecessarily combative or dismissive of traditional values. In a world where everyone has a platform to voice their opinions, it's inevitable that those who hold strong views will face both agreement and dissent. Audience. Whether this new adaptation succeeds will depend largely on how viewers receive it and whether they feel a connection to Ziegler's portrayal of the character. Audiences have every right to voice their opinions, just as Ziegler has the right to express hers, even if they don't always align. As the debate continues, it will be interesting to see how both the film and Rachel Zegler's career evolve in light of this backlash. Whether or not the new Snow White lives up to expectations will ultimately depend on its reception by audiences who, at the end of the day, hold the power to make or break a film. What's clear is that Zegler's journey as Snow White has become a lightning rod for larger conversations about representation, respect for classic tales, and the evolving nature of modern storytelling. Afternoon, good evening, and good night.